Did you always want to be a composer?
Well, I heard music before I was born, so I was really always playing with music. Music is part of my life. And when I was a child, I was playing the piano in the opera house with 6 years old, and also making few little pieces, compositions, which means that really has been something very organic, very much part of my life.
Who inspired you or influenced you the most?
It depends of the period of my life. I think that, let's say that the 60s, when I was living in New York, it was the time when I met several composers that became friends and that I also became interpreter. I did many times really first performances of their music, and they were important, I think, in my life, which was really Stravinsky, naturally, because I played with him. I was a soloist under his baton, also in the beginning of the 60s. Luciano Berio, with whom at that time I had a piece, a play, that represented really the first electronic music performed in Brazil. We did in the Teatro Municipal in Rio and in São Paulo, and that was an electronic drama. The name was Turn Off My Spotlight. That was a sort of a partnership between us, really. The dramaturgy and the music and all that. Then I met also at that time John Cage, which was a revelation to me. Was absolutely a new avenue, and I did work with John Cage during years. We did things together, and I also a little bit later, in the end of the 60s, I started really performing and researching and working on the music of Olivier Messiaen, and I recorded most of his piano music in New York, and naturally that is absolutely a fantastic really discovery for a pianist, because no one after Debussy has worked so deeply with the instrument as Messiaen in the 20th century. Well, this is just few of them, but I became friends with them, Stockhausen and Lucas Foss, Xenakis, and they wrote pieces for me, and I did first performances. So this was really very striking in my life.
What were the challenges of being a female composer at that time in Brazil or abroad?
I think that I realized all the challenge of being a female composer in New York, because that was the period that the women's lib was very strong, very powerful. And that was really the one of the waves, let's say, of the feminism that really I was there, I participated, and it was very important in my life. In Brazil, this had not arrived yet, nobody would talk about. And I think it's very funny that now we are, after all, in the 21st century, and we still are asking the same questions about women composer. I don't know if you know, you must, but it's only 2% of women composers really in the international programming of classical music. So the prejudice is there, as strong as always. And just to say I was much better, it's not much better. It's the same.
When did you start being interested in electronic music. And what kind of equipment did you have at the 60s or 70s when you started?
No, I started, of course, as I said, the first piece that really was very important was this piece that was in '61 with Luciano Beiro that we did in Brazil in the Opera House, in the Teatro Municipal, and that represented really the first really concert of electronic music in Brazil. And then I was working in the United States. I was doing my master's degree there, and with analogic music, of course, in the '60s. And we used at that time the Moog, a Buchla, and these were really the instruments that I used. But at that time, electronic music was not a democratic sort of thing. You needed to go into a studio because nobody could really have it home. It was very expensive, the instruments and everything. And there were very few really electronic music studios. For example, for this piece that I did with Luciano Berio, this was in the Studio di Milano, Studio di Fonologia di Milano, that Luciano Berio worked there. But in Europe there were few studios. In the United States even less. In Brazil, zero. Absolutely zero. So then, with the event of the digital, really, instruments in the 80s, really beginning of the 80s, then things became very democratic. Everybody can have your own instruments at home, and first we had all these, Yamahas and things, GX7 and things like that. And I used this a lot lively. I performed those a lot with. I used also something that was an English instrument at that time. That was the Sinti AKS, which now is a vintage sort of instrument, and that I used a lot also live. We would do this in real time, but. By now, you don't need anything. You have a laptop, that's it. Which is very good because it's democratic, but also poses a problem, is that anybody can do any little joke and say that's music, and it's not, because music takes time, reflection, and work, serious work.
You want to talk about your inspiration for Liquid Voices?
Yes, this is really my really recent piece, and we are here in London for this first performance of the film, and it has been a challenge to me to work simultaneously with two media, the theater and the cinema. So I did two scripts, one script for theater, which we did in São Paulo, at the Sesc, and one script for cinema. And as you know, it's different. The language, the media, you have questions that you cannot do really in both. And what I did for the cinema was not a documentation of an opera in theater, as I have done it all my other operas. I did really videos, documented videos, etc., and all the other video music that I did. No, this was really thought as a film. And the inspiration, well, the inspiration is a long story, but I will try to make it short. It was the piano, because the piano has been really my companion since I was practically born. So this piano I used, I really worked, and it really is a sort of imprisoning an instrument, really, a performer, because you are there 7-8 hours a day, as you know, and this for many, many years. So then I decided not to really perform anymore, because I couldn't really be 8 hours in the piano, performing new music everywhere, traveling, and at the same time composing, especially the kind of composition that I do, that I work with a group of instrumentalists and singers and actors and dancers for many years. People that working with me for 25 years. So it is a different way. It's not like a sort of traditional composer that write a string quartet and send the music and that's it. Maybe eventually her goes to see the premiere, sometimes not even that. So the business of the living, I mean, with an instrument brought me to Liquid Voices, because I had used this piano first as an installation, as an instrument that I really put it on an open sea with a singer performer, and that we filmed for one day, and this you can see there is a music video film, and after that the piano really sunk. We left the piano 2 months underwater, and we fished the piano out after 2 months with all the barking. We needed all this sort of really sort of destruction of the piano, because it's not something gratuitous. The idea was that the piano, for me, is the icon of the really Western civilization, one of the icons, a very powerful one of our culture, the Occidental culture. And I feel that this culture is sinking, is submerging, and it is a little bit like a crime for our really culture that is disappearing. So that is what I thought about this piano. And then after really fishing this piano out, I had an installation in museums and things, and I said, well, it's not yet finished. So that came with the idea of this singer, this diva, that's a pianist also, and that embarks into a really diaspora, really a tragic, without a return trip of a ship, and that really is a wreck, is a shipwreck, and she really had to, I thought that she had to be situated into a real story, and the real story that I found with a lot of research was the Struma, was this ship that left Romania in 1941, was the last ship that left Europe in the Second World War with 800 really refugees, Jewish. And it sunk and all of them died. So in my story there is only one survivor, and the survivor is the piano that is found later by a Arab fisherman that really hears the voices that come with this piano. And the piano is the black box of today. That is what really tells the story, and comes with all the ghosts in a black box. I'm sure that comes with ghosts. One of them is her voice, and like a Sherazade, she comes every night to tell her story and singing. And the fisherman really is seduced by this spectre and falls in love with the voice of Mathilda Segalescu, which is the name that is a fiction name. And then the importance, I think, it's also the view of the refugees, the really shipwreck, and this sort of medieval modernity that we have been living in now, still, and has gone on on and on forever since the Middle Ages of persecutions, and also the questions of the Palestinians, because it is the Arab and the Jewish woman, so it's a lot of political views there underlined, because the film naturally is not obviously a political film, it is an art film, but underline, that's really the most important thing to understand.
Advice for composers today?
I think we have to really, you have to follow your destiny. If your destiny is really to be a composer, and that's what you need to say and to express your ideas, that's what you have to do. But don't expect too much.
In what sense?
Well, I don't think we are getting any better. I think music is in a very difficult moment. You know, the mass media really finished with the sort of really music education and sensibility and perception. People don't hear anymore. They're not interested in hearing. They just want really sort of consumers, really, sounds, and you don't have anymore the moment of reflection that needs to hear music. And
how could we change that?
You think it's going to change?
I don't know. Do you think it could change?
I hope so, but I don't think I will see that.
Don't say that.
Well, that's realistic.
Well, maybe. What do you think it could change? How could it change? Through education or?
Well, through really the kids, the education that we have been trying there in Brazil. I have been doing for several years now. I bring music to all the surroundings of Rio, you know, all the slums and the kids that have absolutely no means economically, and we talk and we don't make any concession. We really put something like even a John Cage, whatever, you know, and you explain a little bit and you joke and you show, and we have a little bit of theater, a little bit of cinema, a little bit of music, and well, this is really a way of doing it, but it is a drop in the ocean.